Hello and welcome to the Page 49 podcast. I am your host, Montgomery, the librarian with a library and a degree. So it's been quite a while since I last recorded my library podcast. But since we're all hunkering down, so to speak, due to the coronavirus, I thought it was more appropriate now than ever to highlight what we have in our library collection. So what I was able to do, through the magic of technology, was find a fellow librarian in which she has been on my podcast before. If you had listened to my Star Wars Last Trailer reaction, she was interviewed along with her husband, Frank. So being that she is a Star Trek fan, this is more of her element, so I wanted to kind of pull her in and be part of this podcast. So before we get started, I do want to give you a warning. If you have not finished Star Trek Picard, Melinda and I will be going to spoiler territory, so by all means, pause the podcast and then come back to us when you're done. So on that note, let's go into the conversation. One of the things that I've enjoyed about being a fan for all these years is the optimism of humanity. So in these kind of trying times, at least we can say in the 24th century or the 23rd century, we've gone past this. So whatever we're dealing with right now, we will get past this because Star Trek exists.
Absolutely.
So we got news for the future.
Yeah, and it's something that everybody on the planet is dealing with, which is pretty cool. I mean, in the Star Trek universe, the thing that united us was the visit from the Vulcans, and we're like, oh my God, we are not the only things out there. And then like all of a sudden mankind is like, okay, so we are from the same place. So we are, one species and unite and all that stuff. Maybe it's the virus that does it to us.
Maybe. Or creates a planet of the apes. Who knows? Either way, things are changing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it totally blew my mind when you did the Vulcan Live Long and Prosper, and I was like, oh my God, this is such an appropriate greeting for coronavirus.
Yeah,
live long and prosper. It even like has a hint of health and. It's so cool. I was like, maybe that's what happened on the Vulcan planet where they established this tradition.
Yeah, because they're not too touchy feely. They're just like, hey, keep your distance. How you doing?
Yeah, live long and prosper over there.
Right. So the whole idea of the podcast that I thought about you is like, oh my God, let's do this Star Trek podcast since Picard just finished. We have a couple of things that we can find online through our library that we kind of not only promote, but also talk about, which in this case would be Star Trek Nemesis. And a couple of items that we found that I'm like, oh my God, this would be great to kind of push and promote. So if you didn't know anything about Star Trek, or these are kind of things that we would like to promote. So that was the idea in my head. That like, oh, we should do this. We should definitely, get around tapping into the things you love. To kind of break the monotony of our everyday existence right now more than ever.
Yes.
And kind of enjoy the moments that we love about watching Star Trek in general. So.
Yes. And that's another thing. I have been binge watching Deep Space Nine ever since Picard finished.
Yes.
I'm all into DS9 right now. And are you doing Voyager?
I started Voyager when I kind of stopped watching Picard around episode 4.
Yeah.
And I started like season 4, and I'm kind of like halfway through season 6. Only because I didn't really care for the beginning part of Voyager, but when 7 of 9 joined them, it was a much better show. Even though it kind of took the focus off the other characters, it's still enjoyable. To your point, it has the thing that I've missed about Star Trek was that week in, week out, the nostalgia of we're here, we're explorers, we have to, find encounters or deal with a dilemma that, pushes us to, analyze our situation. And how do we resolve that, to minimize, maybe a first contact situation or moral situations, things of that nature that made Star Trek kind of more than just sci-fi pulpy kid TV show. This is, kind of a really good head scratcher. What would you do in this situation?
Absolutely.
So that's what I've missed.
And they did, get into some issues of ethics and integrity and what is the right thing, and it's not always clear. Yeah, I definitely did miss that, and being able to what I miss about Star Trek that I think Picard didn't really do was being able to meet these new characters and learn about them and their background and how they became who they are and what their journey has been like. And of course, in Star Trek, it's always like humanity is amazing. It's always the focus of how we try to be more human and just do the most compassionate thing or the right thing or what have you. I guess in this case, it was all about Picard. So they didn't really try to introduce the backstories of the other characters. I don't know, but I would have preferred that. I would have liked that, to have that same type of setup where it's like you have the different characters and they all interact in different scenarios. Let's see how Rios handles this, or let's see why Rios is that way. But when we first meet him, he has shrapnel sticking out of his shoulder. What happened? How did that happen?
Right.
Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know. I will say, just putting all the negative stuff, in a tight little bubble here. The issues that I had with Picard, much like you said, is there's no development of the supporting cast, which, in fairness, a lot of the beginning of the series for other shows also don't focus on them as much. But considering this is a new crew and considering this is a new mission, I don't feel totally invested in them in the least respect.
Right.
The other aspect would be the cursing across the board. Even in the last episode, it was like, can we just put a break on that? It didn't need to feel like you had to do that. You can get your point across a little bit more creatively than being so on the nose about your feelings right there.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm still glad that we have it.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah. If we didn't have it, I prefer to have it and to be talking about what we thought they could have done better than to not have anything,
Right.
And
that's the other thing too, is that good and bad, Star Trek is going to be part of us. And there's going to be stuff that we love, and there's plenty of stuff we hate. So that's fine.
Yes.
So that's why I'm glad that, we get to talk about Picard and we talk about other things that we have in our collection, because you can find something that someone else may not like, but you love. Right. And that's fantastic. That's what Star Trek is all about, is finding the thing that you love, whether it's a character, where it's a storyline involving a situation in a new dynamic way, like us encountering the Borg or the Cardassians or whatever you want to explore. That's fantastic. That's what I love. So the other thing too is that we wanted to talk about Star Trek Nemesis, because
you kind of there's a lot of throwback to Nemesis.
Yeah, and I was thinking too is that, if you're watching CBS All Access, which is kind of free until I think the 20th or 22nd of April. So if you have internet, you can watch the whole entire series for free, which is great.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about having that to be a charge to your bills. But what I love is that Nemesis is available on Hoopla. And I think it's, after watching it, I don't know how your impression was, but after watching Star Trek Nemesis, it is even more relevant for someone who does not know Star Trek to watch Nemesis, because I think the whole idea of the Data and Picard relationship is so crucial to see how it plays out in the new Picard series. So without knowing that history, it's kind of almost meaningless.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, watching Next Generation, you can kind of see the relationship, but that's quite an investment. There's a lot of seasons there. But if you watch Nemesis, and then I didn't even remember that at the end. I don't know if this is okay that I'm giving so many spoilers here. But I didn't remember that at the end, the song that they played was the song that Data sang to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, why did they choose that song? I don't understand the relevance until I saw it. I was like, oh, okay. I forgot about that.
Right.
So, yeah, there are a lot of little like tie-ins to Nemesis that you can see where his guilt came from and why he kept dreaming about Data and, you know, feeling like sad about what happened.
Right. So, you know, with your library card, you can definitely check out Hoopla's version of Star Trek Nemesis for free, and I think you get it for 3 days. But it was nice seeing them again. And I really hated watching this movie when it first came out, and this is when Star Trek was kind of going downhill. Star Trek Enterprise was still around, and also... Star Trek Enterprise was going... I think we're finishing its run, and we had one more last movie, and like nothing was connecting with Star Trek fans, so we had to take this break. Until 2009 that the new Star Trek movie came out with I don't know, with Abrams. I think it was like almost 6 years that it re-energized the franchise. But before then, you know, this was the kind of thing that like, we should have had a better swan song after all this. But watching Star Trek Picard, I felt I had that closure, much like what Picard did with Data. That moment that I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to have something a little bit more, not much uplifting, but just a final goodbye, you know, to say you're and just kind of have closure. So it felt great to go back to watching Nemesis, a movie that I did not like, to feel, oh, this is what it felt like to be a Star Trek fan, and remember how much I love all these characters, and see how it all played, and it works better watching Picard, in my opinion.
I think so. I think you're right. And I'm so glad that Hoopla had Nemesis, because I was looking for it and I was like, it's not on Amazon Prime. I don't want to pay for it.
Exactly.
And when you told me it was on Hoopla, I was like, oh my gosh, I that's right. So I checked it out, watched it, and you can watch it several times. It's not like when you rent something from Amazon, you can just watch it and then in 24 hours it's gone. You can watch it as many times as you want in those 3 days. So that's fun. And I do agree. When it first came out, I didn't like it. I was like, who is this fake Picard? You know, this little skinny guy. He looks nothing like him. So
they tried.
But they tried, I guess. I kept thinking that's the best you could do. I mean, sorry, guy, but watching it after watching Picard, it did tie it together better. Like I had a different appreciation, you know, of the movie. So that was fun. That was good.
Now,
I enjoyed it.
While we were doing research, I came across something through Overdrive.
Okay, what'd you find?
Okay, so on Overdrive, there is an audiobook. It is called Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope. And it's by, I'm not saying Una McCormick. So basically, this is the prequel story to Star Trek Picard. So we get the beginnings of like the meeting between Picard and Ralphie. So that's, I'm like, okay, if that 10 chapter audiobook can fill in the gaps of the essence of what happened or before it happened, then I'm kind of on board. So that's when I'm like, okay, I will listen to this, because I, like you, I don't know anything about these characters. So if this kind of helps fill in those moments, how they know each other, or the events of from Star Trek 2009, where you have the Romulan Empire falling, what's the buildup, you know? So that was the one thing that I like. I'm really good.
Great.
So I'm kind of cool about that. But as a warning, much like Star Trek Picard, there is cursing already in this audiobook. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. So
it's our new culture, Monty. We got to get used to it.
I know, but I'm just saying, come on. I can't even share this with my kids. Not that they don't. Yeah. But, you know. But as us for Star Trek fans, I think it's fine. It helps fill in that little scratch that I needed to know about this.
Wow.
Like, much like what Nemesis did for me with Picard, this audiobook is kind of doing the exact same thing. So what's cool about this right in the very beginning is that Picard is being promoted to Admiral. So next in line, because Data's no longer there, Captain Worf becomes in charge of the Enterprise. So remember a while ago that Michael Dorn was trying to pitch the Captain Worf TV series. Well, we kind of have it ish in this story. We have him as that. So I'm like, wow, that is kind of cool. There is a nice little moment between Beverly and Picard, which I'm always feeling that was like such low hanging fruit that it was so easy for us to be satisfied. Just do this already. Make that thing happen. Yeah. I'm like, and they never touched that relationship or never went down that road. But it's still nice to see, or hear their interaction, right before this mission's going on. So it has right now all the feels that I want to hear in a Star Trek novel. So,
that's exciting. That's so cool. I can't wait I want you to finish it so I can check it out as well.
So again, exactly. So that's the only downside is that there's only 2 copies available, and I have one of them. Someone else has it. So that's the only downside is that Overdrive and Access 360. We do have a limit on the license, but once it becomes available, and if you put yourself on a wait list, you'll get notified.
It goes fast.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be notified that it's available to you, and then you can check it out next. So. But that was my little 2 cents on that. And I still have a couple more, but I want to tie that into our Picard conversation.
And that's the thing. I never really was the type of Star Trek fan that would look outside of the TV series for more information. But I guess I finally got to that point in my life, or maybe it's being home and quarantine where I'm like, there's more out there. I want more. I want more stories. Tell me, how did this happen and how does it connect? And it's really fun. It's very fun and very exciting. So that's cool. I'm glad that you told me about that.
Well, if you want even more information, but this is more about the genesis of Star Trek in all the 50 years, there is an audiobook on Access 360 called The 50-Year Mission, the first 25 years. And basically, it's the kind of story that if you're a diehard Star Trek fan or you want to get people involved, this is like everything you wanted to know. Kind of like a documentary-ish in a book form. So it goes behind the scenes about how things went, what were the struggles to get the series on air, everything. So that's another good audiobook that I'm enjoying as well. And that was on Access 360. What do you have on your plate that you've been checking out, or at least?
So, RB Digital, I really do enjoy the SFX magazine because it doesn't just have information on Star Trek. It does a lot of other things in the sci-fi realm. Right now, their big story is Red Dwarf. I don't know. They're going to do a new movie, and I'm a big Red Dwarf fan too. So that's exciting. But they do also often talk about, of course, Star Trek. This is a big. You can't have a sci-fi magazine that doesn't talk about Star Trek. But as you pointed out to me earlier, there is also a Star Trek magazine where it's just all Star Trek.
Right.
So I was reading on that as well, and they were interviewing the characters in Picard and getting their feedback of how was it to now you're in the Star Trek family and how do you feel. So that was exciting. And then they give you more information about what's coming out. Like how you said, there's going to be these new episodes coming out with Section 31 and the Lower Decks or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
So it gives you a lot more information about what's happening in that world and what to expect. So that's cool. And I didn't realize this, but you can have these magazines checked out on your account kind of indefinitely. Like I went back to my history and old issues that I've read are still there and are still, I can still access them. I can still read them. So that's really exciting.
Yeah. And there's no limit and you can download to any device. I know last year we added new titles, one of them with being Empire Magazine, which is phenomenal. It's a UK publication, and it's expensive as heck. But
I'm sure.
Because I listen to their podcast, so I'm always like, I would love to get a subscription, but now I don't have to, because through my library and my library card, I have access to Empire Magazine and older issues too. So
exactly,
that's what's
and
great
I used to also listen. I used to also listen to read Analog, which is like short stories, and that's on there too. And those are expensive. If you try to go to Barnes and Nobles and buy the issues, it's like $8 an issue or something like that. But it adds up, you know, and it's and they also have the great courses. I didn't know that, but you know, the audiobooks,
yes,
they have like 320 different great courses titles available to check out and listen to. So if you're feeling scholastic, is that the right word?
I guess.
If you want to learn something.
Yeah, what better time than to learn something new is to have a course that's online or like an audio form or video, whatever you want to have it play to you.
On Hoopla, the graphic novels?
Yes.
So that, I love that we have comic books. Again, another expensive investment. Like if you're going to read a comic book, and it's like maybe $2 or $3 every issue, but there's like, I don't know, 40 issues. It adds up. So that we have it available for free on Hoopla, and you can check it out like almost right away, if assuming there's no request list on it, and it's available on your device. I read Star Trek Spock Reflections by John Byrne. So it was cool. I mean, it has a throwback to all of the old characters. There's a story about Pike. There's a story about Kirk, and even Picard is in it. And it's just Spock's journey to Earth. He's leaving Romulus to go to Earth, and it's a mystery as to why. And the story is told. There's some flashbacks that give you some insight into his memories and who he is, and what is it that would pull him from his place in Romulus to revisit Earth for this secret mission. And that's what the story is.
Is it, do you know, it's a time frame, if it's the after the unification episode, or is it during, or does it even say anything?
I think it's before.
Before, okay.
He's teaching Sarek's message on Romulus.
Okay.
Is that before or after?
No, I think it's one of those that until Picard finds out that he's doing this on Romulus, that's the beginning of the unification episode. So he might be secretly in hiding, so to speak, doing this.
Right.
So, see, that's what I love about these graphic novels, is kind of delving in and telling stories that we have room to kind of explore. And it doesn't have to be like a full, complete story. It could just be these little vignettes of like Spock, his memories of Pike and Kirk, and his interaction with Picard. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of cool moments that I love, that these graphic novels get to explore.
Yeah, agreed. That was really nice.
Yeah. So the other thing too with Hoopla is that they increased the allotment up from, I think, 10 to 15 per month. So the only thing that I would advise anyone who's new to Hoopla, if you want to do the graphic novel, make sure you get the full graphic novel. So one graphic novel can have maybe 6 single issues of the complete stories, as opposed to the individual stories that is just like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, so forth. So if you get the complete one, it only counts as one, as opposed to getting individual ones, you're going to be counted as one for each one. So.
Right. It's like a chapter, which is what I did. Right. I was like, I should have got the graphic novel, the complete version, issues 1 through 4, but I went volume 1, volume 2. Volume 3.
Exactly. So, the one that I started to read also, and this is just my little thing, is that I like crossovers, and this has to do with DC. There's one for Star Trek meeting the legions of superheroes. So, yeah, it's one of those, somehow they wind up in each other's universe. So, okay, we'll see how this turns out. But there have been some really good ones, like Star Trek and meets the Planet of the Apes. There's one with Green Lantern, which I love. And this is one of my favorite ones with that kind of crossover. But, they've done Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, yeah.
There was a Michael Jan Friedman, I believe. He was one of my favorite Next Gen authors, but he did a book, and I'm not sure if it's online, but it's one with the X-Men. And I am not sure if it's something that I'm not supposed to read, but all my copies have either been ruined by nature or by my cats. So I'm like, every time I try to pick up that book, somehow that book gets shredded. So it's like the universe saying, don't read that one. Of all the things, don't read that one. But
is it available as an ebook?
I'm going to look for that. Just so I can just finish it. But I love that kind of storytelling where it's just like a fan, just like, what happens here if we do this and play with that little universe and cross the stream, so to speak? I'm all in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that author, Michael Jan Friedman, I checked out an audiobook by him called The Valiant.
Yes.
Star Trek Next Generation. And it's the story of Jean-Luc Picard before he was captain, when he was just, I think he was the lieutenant in the Valiant.
Okay. I'm getting confused with him with Stargazer, because Stargazer is when he was command of.
Right.
And Jack
Yes,
Crusher.
this is before.
Right. Okay. So it's before then. Got it.
Yeah. Right. So it's just the way it was advertised was that you could see how he, as a young man, comes into that position of power or command, not power, but command, and how he became the captain that we know and love. And it's just like, oh, captain, my captain, So that should be interesting. I tried listening to it yesterday in the car, the audiobook. I mean, I checked it out from Hoopla, and you can just connect your device to the car and press play. So that's it. That's what I got so far.
Okay. And there's plenty of other Star Trek things that we can still talk about, but maybe we'll leave that for another podcast, hopefully, and we can talk about that and go forward. So, these are tough times indeed, but if you get overwhelmed, I highly recommend that you turn to Star Trek and find the love that we've loved for so many years in our material. So it's a great time to kind of catch up with old friends or make new friends with all our Star Trek items that we have in our library. All right, so on that note, we are done with today's podcast. So hopefully in the future, Melinda and I will get back together and talk about more Star Trek content. And we would love to hear from you. Is there going to be something that you want us to talk about or review? Love to hear your voice. Share your feedback, okay? So how do you do that? Simple. Email me at monsterscifishow@gmail.com. All one word. So monsterscifishow@gmail.com. So again, follow me on the various social networks. So again, thank you for listening to us on the Page 49 podcast. See you next time.